Welcome to the Rise of the Goddess Collective podcast. I am your host, Michelle Julian, and you know me. I am here as your guide, as your facilitator to strengthen your superpowers and share with the world how you actualize that and activate your own goddess wisdom. And that is the whole purpose of this platform, is to share this amazing world. As goddesses, we are so super powerful. We can birth babies. We can basically do multiple things at multiple times because we can multitask, unlike the other sex, let's just say it. And I just love sharing and interviewing other goddesses. And today, right before the full moon, we have an amazing guest who I met actually through online through this program called Podcast Baby, where we both kind of said, okay, I am going to take that leap of faith and create my podcast, the podcast that I've always wanted to create. And there's no better time now during the pandemic, because right before that, the pandemic was kind of like talked about, and then before you knew it, it really did happen. So we had all this extra time to be indoors, to be isolating, and create that podcast that we knew in our hearts and our souls that needed to be created. And Karen Bradford, she is here today with me, and I want to introduce Karen to you. And let me just tell you, this is going to be a juicy, like all the goddesses, interview, because we're going to talk about the real things, not the fake things that are out there online, but the heart-to-heart things that we know that can be difficult, but we do this process of listening to our inner intuition, and that really is in our heart and in our gut. And how do we be discerning to understand how to communicate that out into the world so we can be part of the change that we're all looking for? So Karen, welcome to the Rise of the Goddess Collective podcast. And I just want everyone to know that Karen is a coach that helps other leaders that are teachers to really rise up their own consciousness to be the leader that they're looking for so they can be that change. So Karen has a lot of experience. Matter of fact, right before the podcast, I was saying to her, okay, Zoom has changed. And I've been trying to figure out how to make sure I see you and you see me when I share this on YouTube. And guess what? She knew the answer, because she knows how to do research. Like, she's like a research analyst, kind of super powerful leader type. She, out of the box, she probably had to learn a lot of things along the way to become the leader that she is, because that's what leaders do, right? We invest in ourselves, we take courses, we spend time online to learn how to maneuver the online world, because that's the way of the world now. We're at least 60 to 70% really sharing our businesses, our wisdom online. So I can't wait for you to share with the audience what your whole mission and passion is for the next iteration of the pandemic that's not a pandemic, online, offline. How are you as a goddess with your leadership and your coaching skills learning how to do that innovation and pivot online?
Well, Michelle, it's great to be invited and have the opportunity to share with you and your listeners. I'm excited for the opportunity to just chat and see where it goes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, would you say is your chapter right now in your life?
I was thinking about that question as I was walking the dog today. I was like, now what season am I in? And particularly the reason why I took additional time, because my initial answer would have been summer, right? Thinking about the sunshine, all things are going well. But I had a tragedy 5 years ago and lost my daughter in a car accident, my husband and I. And that sent us through a winter really quick. It's like we skipped a season and I think I spent about 5 years in winter. And I just recently have felt like, especially in this particular new calendar year, that I'm in spring. It's a new season. I've come through that full grief cycle, if you will, still missing my daughter, still remembering her, cherishing her memories, but I feel like I have come to a place where I can embrace all things new. So my current season is spring.
That's wonderful. That is so wonderful. That sounds like a hard thing that you had to go through, and you're still processing it. I'm sure
Of course.
that's the practice of you honoring what feelings that you're going through when we go through these traumatic experiences, whether we lose a loved one or we experience our own potential near-death experience, and how it changes us. It really does change us. And I think that also it gives us an opportunity to go deep within that sadness and honor yourself so you can actually do what it is necessary, which is to grieve, right? So, because if you're not really honoring that and grieving that, then what happens? What happens is you're spiritually bypassing, and we don't want you to spiritual bypass. Now, do we?
No.
I mean, it's important for you to feel whatever it is you're feeling so you can heal that, and that helps you be more aware of other people and maybe their possible sufferings that they're going through. So, with that being said, what would you say when you talk about your life being in this spring chapter, how this has helped you with your personal life in a way that you've been able to innovate and pivot more online?
I think, with the ability to be able to hibernate, we were hibernating. Not only was I hibernating in my grief mode, but we were hibernating because of the pandemic, which gave us a lot of time to think and really step back and really look at life, and see what's important and what's not important. And am I really doing what I'm called to do? And so I've always been a voice for people. I've always been that advocate. And I went through a transition after teaching and leading other people. I just wanted to empower, to ignite skills and strengths in other people. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel like I am being useful to the world. And so with the online piece, that was difficult because I'm an introvert. I'm not one that likes to be on social media live. That's my husband. My husband's actually good at that. That's just not me. But I spent 1 year online teaching that when I was coming out during the pandemic, and I love the small group experience because you're able to tap into individuals more so than being in a big Zoom webinar or what have you. The same holds true for in person. But I think being online gives you a farther reach. So not only are you, when we were in person, it was just the people in the room, but online, the world's your oyster. You can reach anyone. You know, you mentioned yourself that, you know, your podcast is listened to by people around the globe. And so that global, but yet local feel that online brings to all of us who are wanting to pivot and be online, I think that provides new opportunities and expanded opportunities. So I'm exploring now, how do I want to position myself online to really be the best advocate that I can be. And I hold so many different hats, so it just depends on what hat I'm on using at that time, whatever hat I have on at the time. But I think that's the main point, is being able to determine at this moment in time, am I really being my authentic self and being an advocate for whomever my audience or my target or whoever's in front of me at the moment. And I think that's important. That's important to me, at least.
I love that. I love that. Asking yourself that question, am I being my authentic self so I can show up for who needs to hear my wisdom? And here in the Rise of the Goddess Collective, it's always about strengthening that intuition of listening to that higher perspective, right? The higher self and the perspective that this wisdom is not only for me, but it's for someone else out there listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube. So with that in mind, my question is, how do you, with your own practices of goddessing, as I call it, let's get goddessing, how do you strengthen that inner goddess wisdom so you can be discerning of making that decision for your personal and business life?
Two things for me. I'm always in reflective practice. And that comes from a decade of using that strategy in the classroom. I decided to bring it home to my personal life. So I'm always thinking, what's my wow? What did I do well today? What is it that makes something that made me feel good today? What did I do for someone that made their lives better today? And then I'm always pivoting to, now I wonder, that's my other side, I wonder what I can do better tomorrow. What I can do, and it doesn't matter what area of life it is, but where can I improve? I stop seeing things as failures, but where's an area that I can improve and refine? And that gets us to those incremental, successful approximations of progress, always moving forward. And so when I use that reflective process and I pair it with active listening, those are my superpowers for me to discern where I'm supposed to be going next. And when I mean that active listening, it's not listening what we can for necessarily what we audibly hear, whether it's us talking to a person or whether it's our internal self, but what's not necessarily being said, but maybe we're feeling. You talk about talk about those energies. You know, what am I feeling? What is coming up as I settle myself and just let it rise, and being able to take note of those things. And so I find that these days, that's what I do best. And I find that when I tap into those areas of reflective practice and listening, that I'm always moving in the right direction.
That's beautiful. I love that, because if you're not doing that self-reflection of nourishing your own soul, your soul care is so critical, because if you don't know how to nurture that, how can you help other
Right.
people nurture that? So as a leader, you are going through a practice. It sounds like to me, this is your practice.
Mhm.
We would call it the wow practice, I guess. I think we
Yes,
kind
I
of,
guess.
I think
Yeah.
we
It's,
kind of
it's
like
my wow
created.
and my wonder. It's my coaching. That's really my coaching strategy. I've used it since 2012 when I was a teacher and teaching other, like I said, other teachers. And then I took it home and used it as a wife, used it as a mother. Just all it
Hmm.
just it marries and sits on top of anything that we do in life, I think.
That is so great. So then that way, when you take it and integrate it into your personal life
Mhm.
with your family, whether it's with your children or with your husband, then you're actualizing that spiritual shift and change for you and that person that you're having a communication with. And I would think as a leader, that's like kind of one of the key components is to listen, to be a really good listener. And like you said, to be listening to things that you don't really hear. And that way it helps you be more compassionate and have more
Mhm.
empathy for the
Right.
other person or the other people in the room. So as a
Mhm.
leader, I can imagine that communication is like one of the most important skills
Mhm.
for you to help other leaders master. So I'm just kind of curious, do you have any tools that you use yourself to help the other leaders actually hone that capacity to be a good listener? And also with that listening comes the communication.
Well, I think when I think about my time coaching other leaders, whether it's teachers in classrooms or even working with parents. Even I work with parents and helping them to even think about if their child is having a reading, because that's my area. So if they're at home and they're having difficulty with a child and I can't get them to do, I said, okay, well, let's stop for a moment and let's take a step back. And then that observation piece is so key. Um, I taught those students that had those behavioral concerns. And one of the first things that they ask us to do is just observe and take notes before you start to place your judgment or your opinion on what you see. Think about what happened before this occurrence happened and then what happens after it. So it's called the ABC, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. What happens, and then determine now what's the best way forward. And then after looking at it through that ABC tool, it's a tool, it's a lens, then you go back to, okay, now what are the questions I need to ask? So thinking about that questioning piece. Because oftentimes I find that we're not asking the right question. Questioning matters. And so when you do those two pieces, then that's where clear communication comes, because now you have evidence or you have whether it's qualitative comments, talking, or, depending on what you're working on, numbers, you have some meat to hold on to have a conversation and reference.
That's
And when we do that, even in family communication, when you can marry what you're feeling with what you've seen without judgment, that's where empathy comes in, because people actually, oh, you actually saw and not made judgment first. You actually took a moment to look at the whole picture. And
mm.
I don't think we do that often enough, is to be
That's
able
so
to sit
true.
back.
That's very true. That's why I decided during the pandemic to take Brene Brown's
Yes.
leadership
Awesome.
program. It was an online program,
Uh-huh.
and I took it because I had the time to
Mhm.
work on that skill. Because, as you know, when you are a business owner and you are creating a vision and a message, you always want to try to be a good listener. So you're offering the right services and products that your listeners are listening to. And how do you do that is really about being a better listener and having that skill and those tools to learn empathy. Because a lot of people online are not really good at that. I hate to say it, but there's a few of us that are, on a mission to have the empathy and the compassion and that self-reflection to make sure that we are really listening to our people that need to hear what it is that we want to learn about them so we can serve them in a bigger way, in a way that does help them change and shift and have the transformation. And speaking of shifting and changing and transformation, that seems to be kind of the core of your leadership with your teachers that you help. I'm curious, do you have a specific like process to your transformation with your teachers that are in leadership, or do you do it in a more customized fashion, one-on-one?
Yeah, I'm definitely, it's been a while since I worked with teachers. I now work with superintendents and the higher executives, but it's the same process. And I do it customized. I'm pretty, even though I may coach a group, because some things may be common, at our very core, we're as individuals, we have unique skills and traits that need to be refined. And so that customized one-on-one interaction and experience always yields better fruit than the ones in a group, because you might hit and miss and might not necessarily meet the need. But I found that the greater good is done when you have that time to customize to the individual and meet them where they are and help them to grow from that point forward.
That sounds like it makes total sense, because I love doing one-on-one activations with my clients, and I do offer, group offerings where it helps you tune into a potential self-reflection and awareness meditation. But sometimes people need to start where they need to start. And, you can't make somebody start where you are. So doing that more individualization, customization can help really be that shift for that person and that aha moment. And I'm just kind of curious, like other personal development courses that you've taken since, the pandemic started. Have you had any continuing education courses that you've been able to take to kind of hone in of these skills while you've had this semi-break, as we call it?
I'm trying to think. I'm a reader, so I do a lot of reading. I love Brene Brown. So I didn't take any. I'm trying to think, did I take any courses? I don't necessarily take any courses per se, but I guess I've had new leadership experiences outside of my job that I've been able to apply the practice to, that has made me a better leader, even in my current existing.
That's wonderful. So you've been able to practice
and apply it more.
Right. So you can actually hone your own leadership skill in the process of this evolution of growing and expanding. And I think I can feel like we've actually created some juicy content for your coaching services that you're going to be offering online that we talked about. And I would love to know, like, what kind of things you would like to share with other entrepreneurs who are, mothers or small business owners trying to actually launch online, what could you share with them you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, my son is in college, so I don't have children at home, but definitely being an early empty nester, I definitely can. So I have time on my hands. But I think, even, any mother who's wanting to launch a business, I think we're so used to going in automatic mode and ticking things off the list, that realizing that launching a business takes time, and that everything um, it does not happen the first time, automatically correctly the first time that you do it, that it may take multiple iterations to get it exactly the way you want it. And so giving yourself that space to grow organically and not pushing it. With my coach, I recently had a session where she was talking about pushing and pulling. And she said, the last thing that you want to do with your customers or your audience is push, push, push. You want to draw them in. And I was like, I never thought about it like that, So I would say giving yourself space for your business to grow. If you wanted it up in 3 months, but it's going to take 6 months, take that extra time, because that will help you to be better when you do launch. But also just thinking about that, what are you trying to, what is it that your goal is for your audience? And are you drawing them in, or are you just pushing stuff at them? And I just was like, hey, that was definitely wow.
Yes,
So,
yes, because what that's saying is that you're in alignment with your inner intuition. You've strengthened enough to know that you're just showing up and sharing from your wisdom, that higher perspective. And it's not something that you need to really have a hidden agenda to push.
right.
It's just sharing the story, telling the story of your own strength and transformation, and then allowing other people just to digest that and
Right.
maybe even read more about that story. Maybe give them a short version of it and then say, you want to read more? Here's my blog, or here's a video about me sharing this on Facebook. So it's really more organic and relaxing, and it has a flow to it, and it's very magnetizing because you don't have a hidden agenda of like, buy from me, or sign up with
Right.
me kind of energy. It's
Right.
that aligned flow energy. And so speaking of links, what would you say the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, right now I'm actually transitioning and moving. I guess I'm adding on some services, but the best way to get in touch with me right now is probably I do actually have a blog, but I haven't written on it lately. But it's probably easiest to remember. It's KarenHiltonBradford.com. But I also have another website called Calla Lily Group, which is like the flower Calla Lily Group, that has all of my information on it as well. I'm also on Facebook at Karen Hilton Bradford, so I can be reached there. And then of course on LinkedIn, same name. So yeah, anybody can reach out to me on any of those platforms, and we'll take it from there and chit chat.
That sounds great. So before we end our interview today, I would love to know, what would you like your legacy to become?
My legacy, I want it to become one where they said that I helped as many people reach or become their most authentic selves. Whether it be students, whether it be educators, whether it be parents, because that's always my end goal, is being able to help someone be a better version of themselves that's still true to themselves. And I think that once we do that, or if we can get to that level, then that's where we get the most out of life.
Love it. Love it. And before we end, I'm going to basically offer this up to you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the one thing that you feel that really helps you get through your day being online? What would you say is your favorite either hack or app, or maybe have a favorite tea, something that inspires you to keep going?
Let's see, it inspires me to keep going. I was gonna say, oh, my power walk that I take every day with the dog. But an app, the best one that helps me, and maybe this is because my detailed oriented self, is I love my Google Calendar, my color coded calendar. That is not necessarily inspirational, but it does help me to take charge of my day and have control of my day, so I can have focused times to stop and reflect, or stop and read, or stop and do a prayer or a meditation that helps me to be discerning about what's coming. Maybe that will probably be the best.
I love that. I love that. Having a colored Google Calendar, is that an online thing that you can do?
Well, yeah. Well, if you have the Google Calendar, when you make your different appointments and tasks and things, you can assign things different colors. So you know what different colors mean different things, and that means something for me to stay organized.
That sounds like really a great way to stay focused. I'm gonna have to ask you after the podcast to guide me and show me how to do that. So thank you so much for coming on Rise of the Goddess Collective podcast. I know you'll be coming back with all of your new juicy online programs and personal one-on-one sessions, because again, you're evolving. We as goddesses, we don't stay the same.
Right.
And as a manifesting generator, because I've just gone through human design, that's another thing that I realize, is that I'm supposed to be evolving all the time, because that's what a manifesting generator does. So thank you so much for coming on
Michelle.
here, and have a wonderful afternoon, whatever it is that you're going to do next. And just remember, everyone listening, that I will have all the links in the podcast, and this is on YouTube, and you can also see it on all of the podcast platforms. We've got Apple, we've got Spotify, we have YouTube, we've got all the things. So remember, your activation is my activation.